And we're going to get started standing at the top of the mat today. No props are needed. We're going to come into mountain pose at the top of the mat. I'm just going to face you guys so you can see me okay. So, and let's not make this a complicated stand. Let's just take a natural standing posture. Go ahead and close the eyes. And let's just take a couple moments to become present on our mat and to come into this moment together in our practice. And I'd like us to start with a cleansing breath. So let's just release any air that's currently in the lungs. And then take a deep inhale, fill up the lungs to the top. Open mouth, exhale, let it go. Let's do that 2 more times. Big, deep inhale, fill up the lungs. Open mouth, exhale, let it go. And this third one, we're going to hold it at the top for a couple of moments. So big, deep inhale, fill up the lungs. Open mouth, side out, let it go. Start to check in with the body. Doing a little scan, starting from the feet, traveling all the way up the legs, the torso, your arms, your neck, your head, and just looking for any points of tension, tightness, or any places you might be holding on. So maybe just trying to soften and relax those muscles a little bit and releasing the weight of your body into the earth. So allowing the feet to be anchored and maybe just getting a little bit heavier as you travel up the body and releasing that tension. And if you identify a point of tension in the body and it doesn't want to let go or you can't release it, that's okay. We're just acknowledging it and moving on. I'm going to take your attention to your breath and just noticing the natural inhales and exhales as they enter and leave the body. Noticing where in the body you expand on your inhale. And then noticing the space that's created in the body on the exhale. And then looking at just the natural rhythm of your breath. Noticing maybe if the inhales are slightly shorter than the exhales, or maybe your inhale and exhale pattern are very similar. Just noticing that pattern. And our breath is a great place to come to when the mind becomes chaotic and when our practice becomes challenged. And we can come back to this breath when we need to reconnect the mind with the body and to calm the heart. And we can also use this breath to keep us present in this moment. So when the mind begins to wander, just coming back to and noticing this breath, the life that you inhale and the life that's exhaled. So now let's try and redefine our standing pose, our mountain pose here. So you can open your eyes for this. So if you'd like to keep them closed and kind of feel and explore this way, that's perfectly acceptable. I am gonna start with the positioning of the feet, the stance of your feet. So feet are about hips distance apart. And us women, we like to think that our hips are all the way out here. And when I'm talking about hips, I'm talking about when your legs come straight down from your sit bones, from the back of the bone, back of the pelvis. So really your hip distance is about a fist and a half of space between your big toes. So if you'd like to, you can go ahead and just reach forward, placing your fist and a half of space between your big toes to get that distance. And then coming back up. And then let's shift our weight a little. So let's just play around with the balance, shifting our weight from side to side, maybe shifting more weight into one foot and then lifting off of the other, just kind of shifting back and forth. And then start to go forward and back. So onto the back of the feet, coming onto the ball, maybe to the tiptoes, and just rocking forward and back. We're going to be doing a lot of balance today. So we'll be working into dancer's pose and to tree pose. So this foundation that we're creating in our feet and in our stance is going to be really important. And I want you to remember how it feels to be anchored in the feet once we get settled. So find some stillness. And then we're going to imagine that we have three corners or three anchor points in our feet. So at the heel center of the foot, and then the big toe mound and the pinky toe mound. So imagine in both of your feet, you have these anchors that are securing you into the earth. You're locked in place. And so you're finding an even distribution of weight in those three corners of your feet to feel that grounding and connection with the earth. Okay, so once we have our grounding in our feet, we're going to lift up the kneecaps. So maybe having to fire up your quadriceps and your hamstring muscles to lift up the kneecaps. And then draw the navel in toward the spine. So start to activate this abdominal area. And then see if you can find a natural placement of the spine. So we have these four beautiful curves in our spine. We have the cervical spine, this nice little curve behind our neck. And then we have the thoracic spine, this upper area. So we have cervical in, thoracic out, and then the lumbar curves back in, and then our sacrum curves back out. So see if we can find a natural alignment and curvature in the spine here. And then we're stacking shoulders over hips. And then roll the shoulder blades down the back. So roll your shoulder blades back and allow the shoulder blades to slide down the back. And then hands come down to the side, palms are facing out toward the top of your mat. Tuck your chin in slightly and reach out through the crown of the head. So again, envisioning this beautiful curvature in your spine. And then your head is the next extension in that spine, that rounding at the top. And this is your mountain pose. And so again, anchored so securely and grounded into the earth like a mountain. You are unshakable like a mountain. So that even if someone were to come over and kick out your right leg, you would still be so securely grounded in that left foot that you wouldn't topple over. And just take a couple breaths here, feeling the connection with the earth, feeling that power, embracing your mountain pose. Maybe closing your eyes again if you open them and just really envision the strength of the mountain in this pose, your strength, your power. And maybe even spreading the fingers a little bit wider and sending out energy from your hands. We're going to start to shift weight over into the right foot. I'm going to face you guys again. So shifting weight over into the right foot. And again, finding that anchoring in that right foot, making sure we're secured and plugged into the earth here. And then start to get light on the left foot. So maybe the left foot just kind of hovers and hangs out about an inch or so off of the ground. And then finding your stability here. So maybe just kicking the foot forward and back a little bit, challenging the balance a little. And let's go ahead and take our hands and place them on our hips. And then just noticing that when we make this next shift, that we're, notice what happens in the hips. So if they kick up from side to side, we want to try and keep the hips neutral so that the hip points, so taking your fingers and touching that bony point at the front of your pelvis, those are your hip points, and keeping those facing toward the top of the mat and in line with one another. So just noticing if you have one side that's kicking up and over for this next posture. So begin to bend the left knee, and we're kicking that left knee in toward the right glute. Okay, and we're holding here in this modified single mountain pose, staying tall in the spine, tucking the chin in. And if you wobble and fall, that's okay. That's all part of your practice. If you have access to a wall and you're nearby a wall, you can use a wall to help support you. And then we're going to transition to crescent pose from here. So it's going to be a big step back. So start to bend into that right knee, and then stepping all the way back, landing on the ball of the left foot, coming into our high crescent pose, high lunge. And then again, hip points still in line, facing toward the top of the mat, and then checking in with our alignment in our crescent pose. So the right femur bone is plugged into that right hip socket, and the left femur bone is plugged into the left hip socket. So this kind of powerful movement creates a spiraling effect up through the torso and allows us to grow tall and long in our spine. And then really activating, firing up that back leg. So lifting the back of the right thigh to the sky. Shoulders are stacked over hips. Draw the navel into the spine again. And then again, find that natural curvature in the spine. And then maybe, if it feels good in the body, sinking a little deeper into that right knee. And we want to avoid going too far out. We want to protect the joints, so we want to avoid going beyond a 90-degree angle from our knee and our ankle. Staying here and breathing. Hands can stay here at the hips, or you can bring them to heart center. I know your legs are cooking, mine are too. You guys are doing great. I'm gonna take another inhale. And on your exhale, you're gonna plant both hands on the outside of the right foot, and then release the left knee down to the earth, untuck the toes, coming into low lunge. And you can either if you're comfortable keeping the hands planted onto the earth, you can keep your hands planted. If you'd like to come up onto fingertips, or maybe even coming all the way up, letting hands rest on your right thigh. But we're going to sink a little bit deeper into the hip. So sinking a little bit further forward, really getting into the front of the left thigh, that left hip flexor. And I meant to mention this when we're standing in our mountain pose and we took that one leg mountain pose, but even here, so I wanted to explain the difference between open and closed hips. So this here, our hips are closed. So we have the leg, our hip points are facing toward the front. Our legs are, for the most part, in line with our hip points. And then I'll demonstrate open hips in a couple of poses. I just wanted to differentiate that this is our closed hip, getting into the front hip flexor, that left hip flexor. Breathing here. Take one more round of breath. On your next exhale, plant the hands, and then we're going to shift the hips back, coming into half split. Now, you can keep a generous bend in that right knee, but if you do straighten that leg all the way back, avoiding any type of hyperextension. So we don't want to dump all of our weight and all of the pressure of our legs and our body into that very tender joint. We have some very tender ligaments in there. So we want to protect that joint. So we do that by keeping the leg active. We bend the knee. And then option for the hands, they can rest on the earth. You can come up onto fingertips, or you can even walk back. If you have blocks, you can even use blocks. And then playing with flexing or pointing the toes. So it might feel good to flex the toes, flex the foot and draw the toes toward your nose, or it might feel good to point the foot and point the toes toward the top of the mat. So I'll let you play with which of those two you prefer and choose that option to hold in this half split. You can keep your spine long, so avoid any type of rounding in the spine. So if you have to come up a little higher or walk your hands out a little further, avoid any rounding in the spine. This allows us to stay in the back side of the leg by keeping that spine straight. Breathing. Don't let the mind wander. Stay connected here with your breath and in the sensations that are happening in your body. Go ahead and bend back into that front knee. Plant the hands around the right foot and then step the right foot back to meet the left. And then sinking the hips back, allowing the torso to fold over the thighs, arms out in front of you, forehead comes down to the earth, meeting in child's pose. And so just as a reminder, this is your resting pose. This is your, I call this your wisdom pose. So if at any time during your practice you're feeling out of breath or challenged or something else comes up for you and you need a moment to pause and to rest, only you know when you need this pose, which is why I call it your wisdom pose. So come into this pose at any time during your practice. And this is also a great pose to come to when you need a moment of rest. I don't know what else I was going to say to that. All right, now from our child's pose, with arms out and extended out in front of you, start to activate the arms. So lifting the arms up off of the earth, press your hands into the mat, start to press into all 10 fingers. And then we're gonna lift the hips up, tuck the toes, and then we're gonna lift all the way, hips all the way to the sky, coming into downward facing dog. And then I just want to check in with the alignment really quick. So making sure that hands are about shoulder distance apart and that the index finger is pointing toward the top of the mat, pressing into all 10 fingers. Lift out of the armpits. So find space in the armpits there. Wrap your triceps underneath your arms and slide the shoulders down the back. Draw the navel into the spine and then reach the hips up to the sky. And then do you remember the 1.5 feet of distance that we created between our big toes? Let's find that here in our down dog too. And then make maybe a slight or maybe even a deep bend in the knees to provide as much or as little sensation that you need in the backside of the body. And then heels are reaching toward the earth, but no bonus points if they touch. If they're touching, it just means you have to work harder. All right. And from this down dog, we'll inhale, bend the knees, gaze forward, and we're going to take several walks, several steps to come to the top of the mat. We'll meet in a forward fold. Once you get there, inhale, halfway lift, palms to shins, spine is flat and long. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, one vertebrae at a time, very slowly start to roll up, very slowly. Head comes up last. And then find yourself in your mountain pose. So reactivating that mountain pose, finding that even distribution of weight between your feet, getting anchored into the earth in those three corners of the feet. Lifting the kneecaps, firing up the quadriceps, firing up your hamstrings. The navel draws into the spine, rolling the shoulders down the back. Hands are facing out toward the top of the mat. Chin tucks in and reaching out through the crown of the head. Maybe close your eyes and take in the strength of your mountain pose. If your eyes are closed, you can go ahead and open them. Start to shift the weight over into that left foot. And then again, just playing around with that balance. So getting light on the right foot and then allowing the right foot maybe to kind of swing forward and back. And just kind of adjusting to the balance on that left side now. Very good. And then draw the right heel in toward the right glute. And we'll pause here in this modified single leg mountain. And again, if you're nearby a wall or something like that, you can use the wall to help brace yourself. And just remember that falling out is all part of the practice. And today, what your single leg mountain pose looks like may be different than when it looks like tomorrow or what it would have looked like yesterday. All right, let's draw our hands to hips. And then on our next, take an inhale, and then on your exhale, very slowly start to bend into the left knee, and then stepping all the way back, coming onto the ball of the right foot into our high lunge crescent pose, Anjaneyasana. And then looking at our alignment here, plugging the left femur bone into that hip socket, the right femur bone into that hip socket. So really imagine someone was plugging those bones in, and that's where it's creating that spiraling effect for you. Hip points facing toward the top of the mat. That back leg is strong and active, so lifting that right thigh high to the sky. And then maybe sinking a little deeper into that left knee. Stacking shoulders over hips. And let's bring either hands to the waist or hands come to heart center. And we'll pause here and breathe for a few rounds of breath. You need a little more, maybe sinking a little bit more into that left knee. Again, being mindful to protect those joints. And then on your exhale, you're going to plant your hands, framing the left foot, release the right knee down to the earth, untuck those toes, coming into our low lunge. So again, your option here, you can stay on your hands, allowing the hands to rest on the earth. You can come up onto fingertips, or you can even take the hands and place them on that left knee. And then we're going to sink forward, sinking into the hip, coming into that right hip flexor now, the front of that right thigh. And breathing. Allow the hands to come back down to the earth. And then on your next exhale, shifting the hips back, coming into that half split pose. Again, hands can stay out by your foot. You can walk the hands back. Try and keep the spine long here. It may be helpful to, again, come up on fingertips, or if you have blocks, you can come up on blocks. But trying to keep the spine long, we're getting into the back side of this leg here. And then playing with pointing or flexing the foot and being mindful of that left knee joint. So again, we're not dumping a bunch of weight into that left knee. We're keeping that knee bent and active. I'm not sure if you can hear the boys barking, but they're making sure that you know to protect that joint. Stay present with the breath here. Don't let the agitation of the mind distract you. Your next exhale, bend back into that left knee, planting the hands, stepping that left foot back to meet the right, sink the hips back, coming into child's pose. Allow the forehead to sink down toward the earth, arms extended out long in front of you, and breathing here. I'd like to draw your attention to your hips, the back of the hips, the low back, the pelvis. Noticing how this feels, how the back side of the body feels here. And then when you're ready, start to activate those arms, lifting the arms up off of the earth, hands pressing into the earth, kind of shifting up, tucking the toes, lifting the hips up and back, downward facing dog. Take a breath. And then we're going to walk all the way back up to the top of the mat again, meeting in a forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, palms to shins. Exhale, forward fold. And then inhale, slowly rise up again, one vertebrae at a time. Head rolls up last, meeting in our mountain pose. Begin to shift the weight over into your right foot. And then start to bend that left knee, left heel comes into the left glute. And then I want you to take that left hand. You can take the right hand to the hip, and then the left hand, you're going to plug the elbow into the waist, and you're going to kick your left hand out to the side, kind of like you were a server if you were holding a serving tray. And then you're going to take your left hand and you're going to grab the inside of the left ankle, coming into our dancer's pose. So now you have an option here. You can keep the right hand still holding onto the right hip, or if you'd like to reach it up to the sky, begin to press the left foot into the left hand and see if you can still keep the left and right shoulder in line with each other and then both hip points facing toward the top of the mat. And then on your exhale, start to hinge forward until it feels as far as comfortable as in your body. So it might challenge your balance. It should definitely challenge your balance. Really kick that left hand into the left foot into the left hand. And stay and breathe here for a couple more rounds of breath. Very nice. Oh, these look so good. If you want to challenge a little bit more, maybe hinging a little bit further forward. Again, drawing that left shoulder in line with the right. And then noticing how that feels in that left leg, in your left quad, in your left hip flexor. On your next exhale, start to come back up. Release the foot, but keep the knee bent. Hands come to heart center. And then on your exhale, stepping back into that high crescent pose. We're only here for one breath. Take an inhale. And then on your exhale, you're going to plant your hands on the inside of the right knee, on the right foot. Release the left knee down to the earth. Coming into this lizard pose. Now, if it would feel good from lizard. So we're getting into that back left hip flexor, but let's see if we can, this is where I was talking about opening up the hips. So let's see if we can open up the right hip. So if it feels good in your body, staying planted in the left hand, taking the right hand and placing it on the right knee, and then maybe opening up the torso and opening up that right hip right thigh goes out to the side, maybe coming onto the outside edge of the right foot. This is where we're opening up the hip. So we close the hip, drawing the knee back in towards center, opening the hip, allowing the hip to open up to the right. Beautiful. Plant the hands on the inside of that right foot, and then on your exhale, shifting back, coming into this modified wide leg half split. We'll stay here for a round of breath. On your next inhale, bend back into that right knee, step the right foot back to meet the left, sink the hips back, coming into your child's pose. The class time in this class always gets away from me, so I'm just checking on time. Okay, cool. I know we started a couple minutes late too. When you're ready, tuck the toes, press into the hands, shift your hips up and back, downward facing dog. Take an inhale, and then on your exhale, very slowly, we're gonna walk, meeting at the top of the mat, coming into a forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift, palms to shins. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, start to slowly rise up, rolling the spine one vertebrae at a time, meeting in our strong mountain pose. Begin to shift the weight into the left foot. Bend that right knee, right heel comes into the right glute. Take the left hand, place it onto the left hip, and then plugging that right elbow into the right hip, and then grabbing the inside of that right ankle. Draw the right shoulder to be in line with the left, making sure that both hip points are in line with each other. Start to kick that right heel into the right hand. Option to keep your left hand at the left hip point or reaching it up to the sky. On your next exhale, start to hinge forward, coming into your expression of dancer's pose. Keep kicking that right foot into the right hand and noticing the pull, the stretch that's happening in that right hip flexor and in the right quadricep. Stay grounded in that left foot. Maybe fold a little bit further forward, challenging the balance. You guys are doing so good. Your next inhale, come back up very slowly, very gently. Release that foot. Right hand comes to the right hip. Let's actually draw hands to heart center. Keep that right heel kicked into your right glute. And then on your next exhale, stepping all the way back, high crescent pose. We're only here for a breath. And then on your exhale, plant the hands on the inside of the left foot, coming into our lizard pose, releasing the right knee down to the earth. Getting into that right hip flexor there. And then option, if you liked that twist before, placing the left hand on the left thigh, and then opening up the torso to the left, opening that hip up, coming onto the knife edge of the left foot. And breathing here. Allow that left hip, left knee to come back to center. Plant the hand on the inside of the left foot. Step the left foot back to meet the right, meeting in child's pose once again. Sinking the hips back, arms come out in front of you. And tuck the toes, press into the hands, lifting those arms. Allow the hips to come up to the sky, downward facing dog. Start to now walk the hands to the back of the mat to meet the feet. Very good. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Then very slowly, one vertebrae at a time, rise up, coming into your mountain pose. Now in this mountain pose, I'm going to ask you to Turn and face the left side of the mat. So you're at the back end of the mat, but both feet are pointing toward the left side of your mat. Coming into mountain, begin to shift the weight over into your left foot, finding that rooting, that anchoring. And then again, noticing what happens in the hips. And we're gonna draw the right knee in line with the right hip. And then place it back down. So that was our closed hip. Inhale, right knee in line with right hip. And then open the right knee to the side, open hip. We have closed and open. And then release that right foot down onto the earth. And then we're gonna play with tree pose. So we're gonna take whatever variation or what version makes sense for you and your body today. So everyone's gonna start, we're gonna create this little kickstand with our foot. So stepping onto the ball of the right foot, and then the right heel is gonna step above the ankle. So we don't want the heel or the foot to be resting on any of our joints. So the ankle or the knee joint. So we want that heel to be above the ankle joint. Pausing here. Noticing if there's any shifting or changing happening in the hips and if you can even out the hips. If you feel balanced and would like a little bit more challenge, you can draw that right heel up the calf, maybe resting on the calf. Realigning your balance again. If you'd like a little bit more challenge, maybe drawing that right heel above the knee. Again, making sure not to rest on the knee. And maybe even grabbing that right foot and plugging it in on the inside at the very top of the left thigh. And then pressing the left thigh and the left foot together. Hands can stay at the hips or they can come to heart center. Breathe here. And then whichever option you took, whichever foot variation, whatever foot placement you took, let's keep the right knee pointed out to the right. Then you're gonna take an inhale. And on your exhale, you're gonna make a big step out toward the top of the mat. We're meeting in warrior two. So left toes are still pointing toward the left side of the mat. Right toes are now pointing up toward the top of the mat. Checking in with our alignment. Guess what, guys? Yep, we have to plug those femur bones up into our hip sockets, creating this spiraling effect. Torso is faced toward the left side of the mat. Arms come out to the side like a T, and the gaze is out and over your right middle finger. Check in with that right knee. Notice if it's dipping inside. See if you can draw the right knee toward the right pinky toe. Staying rooted and grounded here. Take another inhale. And then on your exhale, allow the right toes to point toward the left side of the mat, coming in this wide leg stance. Take an inhale. And then on your exhale, very gently folding forward, coming into this wide leg forward fold. Allow the hands to come down onto the earth. Round the spine, let the head be heavy here. Crown of the head is reaching down toward the earth. Keep a slight bend in the knees. And then see if you can tilt your sit bones up toward the sky. So really accentuating and firing up the back side of the legs. You should really feel this in the back side of the legs with that movement. Breathing. Don't let the mind wander. Take your hands to your hips, keeping a bend in the knees, and very slowly rolling the spine up. One vertebrae at a time, head comes up last. Excuse me. And then we're going to take a big step. Left foot comes in to meet the right. And adjusting our stance, coming into mountain pose on the top side of the mat, but both feet still facing the left side of the mat. Okay. Begin to shift weight into the right foot. And then taking that tree pose once again. So coming onto the ball of the left foot, allowing the right heel to come up against just above the ankle. Noticing what happened, what shift, if anything, happened in the hips. See if you can neutralize and even out those hip points. And then if you feel balanced and that feels good, allow the left heel to come up the left thigh. If you feel balanced and good there, maybe allowing the left heel to come above the right knee, inside the thigh. And if that feels good, maybe grabbing that left foot and taking it and plugging it on the inside, high up toward the groin on the inside of the right thigh. Really press the foot and the leg together, whatever point of contact that is. And then option, you can keep your hands at your hips or you can draw them to heart center. Beautiful. Breathe. Being anchored into the earth with that right foot. And then very gently releasing that contact, but keeping that left knee out to the side. Take an inhale, and then on your exhale, stepping all the way to the back of the mat with that left foot. Right toes are still pointed toward the left side of the mat, and then now the left toes are pointing toward the back side of your mat. Checking in with the alignment, plugging those bones into the hip sockets, spiraling the chest, torso to the left side of the mat. Arms up, come out to the side like a T. Gazes out over that left middle finger, and then just checking in with that left knee, making sure it's not dipping inside the leg. Wanting to draw that left knee on the outside of the left pinky toe. It's moving in that direction. Breathing here. Begin to straighten the left leg, point the left toes toward the left side of the mat. Hands come to the hips, take an inhale, and then exhale, folding forward, wide leg forward fold. You guys are doing so good. We're almost done. Hands resting on the earth. Allow the shoulders to drip down the back and then tilt those sit bones up toward the sky. Release the head. Allow the head to be heavy. Breathe. Stay connected with that breath. Then walk the hands towards the top of the mat. Allow the hands to rest on the inside of the right foot, and then step the right foot back to meet the left. High plank pose for just a breath. Release the knees to the earth. Sink the hips back, coming into child's pose. You guys are doing so good. Very slowly, come on up. And we're gonna meet in a seat with the legs long out in front of us. And get grounded in your sit bones, flex the feet, and draw the toes toward your nose, toward your face, so the feet are flexed, strong and active. Keep a slight bend again in the back of the knees here. Spine is long. Inhale, reach your hands to the sky. And then with a long spine, hinge forward at the hips and pause at your first line of resistance. So the first point that you reach any type of tension or pulling or tightness in the back of the legs or in the hips, or maybe even in the back. Allow the hands to come down onto the earth, still keeping the spine long here. Take one more inhale, and then on your exhale, round the spine and allow the forehead to drop down and reach down toward the legs. No bonus points if the head or the nose or any part of your face touches your legs. No bonus points given. If they do, you just have to work harder. As we approach this passive part of our practice, staying present, observing the sensations that are coming up in the body. Don't let the mind wander. Stay connected here. On your next exhale, start to walk the hands back, slowly rise up. We're actually going to walk ourselves all the way on to our backs. And we have one final pose before Savasana. So drawing the knees in toward the chest and then reaching the heels to the sky. So still keeping those feet flexed and active, pointing the toes down toward the nose, maybe finding a slight bend in the knees. Hands come down to the side and hands are resting on the earth. The palms are resting on your mat or the earth. Legs to the sky. Now, if you are nearby a wall and would like to take legs up the wall, this is a really nice variation for your Shavasana. So if you do have that and you would like to set that up now, you are welcome to. I can demonstrate that for you, I think. Yep, I can. So to get into legs up the wall, you just come up, allow your hip to hug up as close as possible to the wall. And then as you lay down, swinging the legs over onto the wall. Torso shimmies over. It's not usually very graceful, but it feels amazing when you get there. So having the wall to support your legs. Again, hands can come down by your sides. If you're taking the legs to the sky variation, draw the knees into the chest. If your legs are up the wall and you're staying here for Shavasana, you can stay here. Drawing the knees into the chest and then releasing the legs down the length of the mat. Arms come down to the sides. Backs of the palms, backs of the hands resting on the earth, shimmying the shoulder blades underneath the back. Tuck the chin into the chest. And let's take one cleansing breath together, releasing your focus, your attention. Release any air that's currently in the lungs. And a deep inhale in, fill up the lungs. Open mouth, exhale, let it go. Shavasana. If you've drifted off, start to come back to your body, your mat, the space around you. Maybe finding some gentle movements, wiggling fingers and toes. Writing some deeper inhales and exhales. If you would like to finish class in a seat, maybe rolling onto a side and gently pushing yourself up. And hands come to heart center and Anjali Mudra. And it's just such a privilege and an honor to share this practice. I get emotional every time I sit in the seat and I express these words of gratitude because they are so heartfelt. And to see each of your light and to see each of you practice and to be on this journey with me, this yoga journey, this journey of life, it's just such a fucking honor. The light in me sees and honors the light in each of you. Namaste. I love you guys.